From passenger trains to rural broadband, the benefits to Kansans of a multi-trillion-dollar national infrastructure package. Plus, the governor's push to axe grocery sales taxes 3 years into her term. But first, an unprecedented move in the Kansas legislature as state lawmakers trigger a special session for the first time ever. But what can they do? That's what we're talking about right now on Kansas Week. I'm Pilar Pedraza, and this is Kansas Week. Lawmakers have been throwing around the phrase special session for months now, but we now have a date and something of an agenda after every Republican lawmaker at the State House signed on to the idea. Rebecca Chung with the KSN Capitol Bureau explains.
Well, it's finally happening. Republican leadership announcing that all 29 Republican senators and all 85 representatives have signed the petition for a special session to take place. And we're told that the Republicans in the state Senate and House have more than the 2/3 majority needed to petition the governor to call for a special session. Republicans are hoping to pass a law that will protect thousands of workers in the state from losing their jobs.
Because the intention would be to protect the individual, right? The core of what we're trying to get to is the protection of someone's fundamental First Amendment rights.
We know that if a special session does take place, 2 bills will be brought to the floor. One would allow workers to opt out of getting the coronavirus vaccine under a religious exemption, or if they feel like it would, quote, endanger their life. The other bill would guarantee workers unemployment benefits if they lose their job over the vaccination requirement. There will be an informational hearing on the bills this Friday. And lawmakers are planning to meet back here at the State House November 22nd for that special session to take place. Right now, the petition goes to the governor's desk for approval, but with the more than 2/3 majority needed, it's likely that this will move forward. At the Capitol, I'm Rebecca Chung.
And state law does require the governor to call that special session now that more than 2/3 of the legislature has petitioned for it. Here to help parse this all out today, we have Dr. Russell Arbin Fox from Friends University and John Wright with KQAM News. Thank you both so much for joining us. And let's dig right into this first special session called by lawmakers. How big of a deal is that really?
Well, it's a big deal because it's historical, obviously. You would think, as you look back at recent controversies that have boiled through Topeka, I mean, certainly the arguments over school closures and masks at the beginning of the pandemic. Here now, this particular special session, especially in regards to the bills that they seem to be intending on focusing, I look at these bills and I see mostly an opportunity for Republicans to grandstand and restate their principles as opposed to actually doing something that will have a general impact throughout the state. I mean, when it comes to religious exemptions, I mean, most of those are pretty well codified in federal law. And when it comes to unemployment protections, well, half of the state Republican Party are really concerned to make sure that doesn't become a big deal anyway. So I see it more as an opportunity for Republicans to make clear their positions than it is for them to pass important legislation.
Now, an interesting point about that is on Friday, and even as we're recording this episode, lawmakers were in Topeka holding a hearing on these 2 bills. And what keeps coming up is taking that vaccine mandate measure on religious exemptions and medical exemptions and moving it beyond just COVID vaccine to all vaccines. And really, John, as you and I have covered news for years now, that's been a growing movement in the state.
It has been a growing movement, and it's constituent driven. These people want to get back in their elective chairs. So what better way to do that than please your constituents? And at the bottom line of all this, COVID's killed over 700,000 people. And we only have less than 66% fully vaccinated here regarding COVID. So when these companies are asking for mandates, wouldn't it be smart to keep your job, get the jab, go into work knowing that you're protecting not only yourself but your fellow co-workers, so that there's no furloughs, no shutdowns? So I don't see the opposition when it comes to putting food on the plate and plus solving the unemployment problem by going to work.
I think this is one of the reasons that the Kansas Chamber has made it clear that they're kind of iffy about the whole idea of strengthening unemployment protections because, from the perspective of business people, they want to keep their workers working. They want them to be vaccinated. There is, of course, a huge amount of conversation about people that are resisting the vaccine mandates and, talking about how this is affecting their basic rights. But as we look across the country, most people are kind of going along with the mandates, and most employers actually kind of like that because it keeps their workforce in the factory. So I suspect that, again, while you're going to see various Republican organizations and donors, supporting the language that they bring forward in this special session, they're going to want to make certain that it doesn't go too far. They want the incentive for people to, make your point, surely, but also get vaccinated so you can keep on showing up for work.
And it may not be the message, but the messenger, if it's coming from up high in Washington, well, states' rights, and that's a whole nother show, I guess. So there's that pushback there. And again, my thing is, you want to solve unemployment, take the help wanted signs down, get people in there, get the shot.
Okay, I'm going to take what you put down as far as the states' rights and the federal issues there. These two bills are very narrowly tailored. They don't really affect the federal mandate, just what happens if that mandate goes into practice. Does that say anything about the state lawsuits, including ones that Kansas has signed on to, against the federal mandate?
It obviously shows that they want to align themselves with those lawsuits. They want to be able to turn them into kind of a unified message going into an election year, supporting Attorney General Schmidt in his campaign against Governor Laura Kelly, who herself has criticized the federal mandates. So again, what we see here is a lot of positioning, probably not a whole lot of actual substantive legislation.
Talking about Kelly positioning herself, does that help her or hurt her, John?
I kind of think it helps her. She's reaching across the aisle. Okay, she doesn't agree on most of the Republican plan, but here's one issue that we can get on board with and move this down the road and solve the Republican problem, the Democratic problem, which is really a people constituency problem. So it makes her look good.
Yeah. Her constituents are the same ones that Republican leadership are responding to.
She can't be reelected unless she gets at least a few Republicans voting for her.
Yeah. All right. Well, while Republicans were setting up a special session this week, the governor was unveiling her Axe the Tax plan to end grocery sales taxes in Kansas. The move came after her opponent for re-election, Derek Schmidt, accused her of not keeping her campaign promise and made his own calls for ending the tax. KAKE's Hannah Baker takes a look at the benefits Kelly says this move would have for Kansans.
One step at a time, Kansas Governor Laura Kelly made her way through the aisles of Dillon's grocery store Tuesday. But she had some special guests tagging along. Wichita mom Jennifer Melcher and her 5-year-old daughter Millie.
I was laid off in 2020.
It's all part of the governor's new proposed plan, Axe the Food Tax, to eliminate state sales tax on food.
So that next year, when Jennifer comes and shops here at Dillon's and spends about $120, she's going to save that $13 or so that she just paid in food sales tax.
She says she believes the leadership in both the House and the Senate seem to be on the same page with eliminating the tax, but there are still hurdles.
The issue will be getting this bill with food sales tax elimination only in it, so that it can come to my desk and I can sign it.
She says the economy is booming with new jobs and new businesses, and the state can afford to eliminate the tax and still fund schools, roads, and take care of the community.
We're one of only 6 states that fully tax food. So people that come from other states of Kansas are always stunned. I hear that all the time. I can't believe you guys tax food. So it's overdue.
Which is a good thing for Kansans like Chris Ortez.
I think it would help me.
Kansas has the second highest food sales tax in the U.S. at 6.5%. And on average, the change would save a family of 4 more than $500 a year and a single family around $200 a year.
That extra $200, I mean, yeah, it'd come in handy.
And that's really what it comes down to, is the money saved for families. And this is a tax cut that would help the neediest families in Kansas the most, John.
And we are so far behind Iowa, Florida, Texas. I mean, I know people who would go out of state to these places when school starts so they can get their kids all the supplies that they need instead of paying this exorbitant tax. I know we're talking about food taxes, but even there, you ever seen the price of milk and butter and cheese and all? I mean, not that Family Dollar and the other, the discount stores haven't been popular, but I have a couple in my neighborhood, well, maybe 4 or 5, and the parking lot is always full. I mean, from the minute the doors open versus driving 10 to 12 miles to one of the more popular stores where those prices are extremely high. And so this is the best move that you can make to help save these families money where it counts, and that's at the dinner table. And it creates a lot less stress on families that you gotta, okay, I'm gonna pay for food, I gotta pay a light bill, I gotta get the kid with Christmas coming up, Thanksgiving, you gotta get the turkey and all these things, so it will definitely help.
But in 2019, the governor did try to pass this tax cut. It was a campaign promise of hers. Didn't make it through as a clean bill, got tacked onto SB 22, which contained other tax measures that she greatly objected to, and she ended up vetoing it. She's taken a lot of hits over that.
And deservedly so, because she went out and made this important promise. The problem that she and other Democratic governors have faced is that you have a strong Republican majority that really want to protect certain business interests. They want to protect the interests of different investors, and that means that they are opposed to different ways in which you might maintain a revenue neutral plan while getting rid of something that brings $450 million a year into the Kansas state budget revenues. They're talking about how we have surpluses this year and how we're going to be able to do it. I would be really curious to dig into the details of the plan. How much of this surplus is really a function of the American Rescue Plan Act and other federal outlays? Is this really something that's going to be sustainable? I suppose if it is something that's sustainable, then the governor is going to be able to make an argument for a clean bill. But my suspicion is she's going to have to tweak some things in order to justify getting rid of the sales tax entirely. And that's going to lead the Republicans within the legislature to fight back hard, because the stuff that she'll tweak will probably be giveaways to businesses that she wants to claw back.
Yeah, and certainly as we look at this issue, it is one that is ripe for political fighting, especially with both the Democratic and the Republican gubernatorial candidate in support of it.
And there's going to be a rub here with the special interests, and maybe there's devil in the details because of we got to replace that money somewhere. Now, whether it's coming from Washington, which is going to be a one-time shot that's going to end sometime next year, then it's really going to get into, okay, so how are we going to replace this? Are we going to rob Peter to pay Paul from another area? And that's going to be a concern because you drive down some roads in town and we got potholes to fill, and you drive some state roads and they're horrendous. So there's got to be some give somewhere.
Well, and even if that money is there because the Kansas economy is doing better, not because of special COVID funds coming from federal, what goes up must come down. Sooner or later, the Kansas economy isn't going to be doing as well, and that money is going to be needed.
And that's exactly correct. Yeah. You've got to be able to demonstrate that this is something that's sustainable for more than just the next 2 or 3 fiscal years. Yeah. And if she's not able to demonstrate that, it's going to be really hard making the case for it.
Okay. I do want to my friends at KDOT, I'm not saying our roads across the state are horrible. Kansas has the best roads in the nation, other roads, but then again, we still have the Kansas Turnpike, we're still paying tolls, so that's another thing.
Well, and we know that the state government has been stealing money out of KDOT's coffers for years.
And that is a discussion for another day that we have had many times on this show. Speaking of KDOT, the Kansas Department of Transportation this week announced it's facing a staff shortage that could slow the clearing of highways during winter storms this year. They join a plethora of other employers desperately seeking help going into the holiday season, as KSN's Alexis Padilla shows us.
Difficult year for us, and Santa needs lots of elves.
Just like the nifty nut house needs seasonal employees.
Typically we have 60 to 80 helping us at our seasonal peak. So we might have 45 right now or 50. We're about halfway there.
Owner Steve John says they are struggling to get people to come in for interviews and show up for work when hired.
I think it's the monies that are out there like Amazon at $15 or $18 an hour, just far beyond what is normally out there for labor. And either the pool of Pool is smaller, or people are staying at home getting paid not to work. We really don't know the true reason why.
John has tried using temp agencies and raising wages to entice workers, a trend many businesses are doing.
We're trying flexible scheduling, attendance bonuses, casual dress environment, possibility of regular employment after the holiday season.
The hiring struggle is being seen beyond the holiday season, bringing new opportunities for job seekers.
In the past, a lot of seasonal jobs might have ended, at Christmas or New Year's, but I think there's a lot more potential for part-time to full-time, seasonal to permanent hiring. And so individuals should just really go out there and look at what might interest them.
Now, I have had several conversations with Dr. Jeremy Hill over at the business department at WSU about this. And what he has said is what we're dealing with right now is an imbalance between the jobs that are available and the skills they require and the skills that workers currently have. And it'll probably take anywhere between 12 months to 2 years to balance those out. I think the biggest question, at least from my perspective, facing businesses right now is, will customers stick around during product shortages, service shortages in the meantime? What do you think, John?
Well, with recent history with temp agencies, I think there needs to be something looked into there, because if you hire someone as a temp agency, you have a few weeks, things appear to be going well on the job, the said employees getting good reviews, and then the next thing you know, that person's out the door and out looking again. And so something needs to be done there as far as notification and an update on the training and identifying, matching those skills to the job, so the employee, whoever that might be, can transition off of the temp list and see a career and not a job.
No. I know Dr. Hill has said also that a lot of that is going to be on businesses to start training their own employees instead of expecting folks to come in with that skill set already in place.
I mean, I think that that's a plausible diagnosis, but I actually really like what the fellow from the Nifty Nut House had to say. We really don't know. Professor Hill and others are looking at incomplete data. We still don't know what trends are really driving what some people are calling, the great retirement or whatnot. Government help obviously is playing a role. Low wages, or at least the history of low wages, and the fact that only recently are businesses really trying to up their wages, that's a factor as well. A lot of these things take a long time to filter down through the economy, and you're right that it's a difficult question about how businesses are going to maintain connections with consumers, as so many of these things are, as you say, uneven, out of joint.
Yeah. Well, one thing that might play a role in all of that is that new infrastructure bill coming out of Washington, D.C. President Biden plans to sign it into law on Monday, along with better roads and bridges. It could bring Kansans more passenger rail service and rural broadband access. KX Jackson Overstreet takes a look at what that would mean.
The sights and sounds of passenger rail travel could be coming back to Wichita in the next few years.
What it does for Kansas, for our resume, is it puts us right in the passenger rail network statewide.
An extension of the Heartland Flyer Amtrak line, which would connect the station in Newton down to Oklahoma City through Wichita, is one of many projects that could be approved after Amtrak got $66 billion for improvement and new projects from the recently passed infrastructure bill.
There was about 120 projects that Amtrak had identified. We've always been one of those top items.
While the Amtrak expansion is not yet guaranteed, there is about $3.4 billion coming to Kansas that is. One of the most impactful items is the $100 million going to expanding broadband.
So it gives them a way to expand their borders in a very rural, remote place.
Tia Tone is a rancher in Butler County. She says before her ranch was connected to broadband earlier this year, she would have to drive her kids to the closest McDonald's so they could use its free Wi-Fi to do their homework. Tone says the $100 million will be a game changer for so many rural communities in the state.
It's just giving that opportunity so the rural communities are on a level playing field with the rest of the world.
And this bill and the plans coming out of it really do rest on the old maxim that within any group, in this case within the state of Kansas, we're only as strong as the weakest link. And this shores up a lot of those weakest links, John.
It really does, and it comes down to culture and history. When you're out on the farm, you're focused on getting up early in the morning and going to sleep late at night because you got those chores to do. But then, as she mentioned in that piece, the kids have to get their homework. They have to get educated, and the broadband keeps you in touch with the entire world, so you're exposed to a little bit more. Of course, parents got to watch out for what they're exposed to, but at least in the culture, they're on par and on a seemingly level playing field with others who are getting education in urban areas.
Yeah. And we certainly, whether we're talking inner urban areas or rural areas, we saw that play out over the last couple of years with remote learning in K-12 schools.
Oh, absolutely. And, I don't want to downplay the significance that an investment of this size can have for, as you say, fixing the weakest links. I do worry. I take a look at the numbers and I say, so Kansas is going to be getting $3.4 billion and $100 million for broadband. It sounds like a lot, but that's actually just 3% of the total. All of the talk about Amtrak is obviously exciting to a great many people, but how many people? It's a big visual thing, but are we actually in a position of demonstrating that Amtrak would be used? You can always find people who will talk about how they'd ride Amtrak, but could it actually be a real contributor to transportation in this part of Kansas?
Well, I will tell you, and we'll end on this note, I've spoken with lawmakers from western Kansas, specifically the Dodge City area, who say it will make a big difference because it opens up markets for them that they can't currently get to because there is no connection between that east-west rail and the north-south rail for them. And so they're really pushing for that.
Well, and if that's the case, then to fight for this portion of the Amtrak money, because it's not designated to states, it's federal, they've got to articulate that case.
And I believe that's what they're working on from the conversation.
And plus, don't forget, professional football teams, basketball teams, college teams, that's a big network. And maybe I-35 won't be so busy if we get that Amtrak in there and get people on these trains heading north and heading south.
Yeah. Great way to make a vacation for the weekend in
go.
Kansas City or in Oklahoma City.
And actually have some money to spend once you get there.
Yeah, there you go. Finally today, should schools remove books from library shelves when a single parent complains? That's what happened in Goddard this last week as the district pulled the books pending a review after receiving a complaint about 28 to 29 different titles. Cake's Trent Bennett shows us what happened.
Parents do have a right to what their kids read, but not for everybody.
Goddard High School student Tori Treadwell says the decision to keep her from checking out certain books on campus this week hasn't set well with her.
If you take that away, then you're taking saying that we don't have the right to express our own opinion and our freedom.
Last week, the district sent an email to the school's library staff and to principals saying that certain books should not be checked out for any reason.
A lot of people are upset about it, and teachers are talking about it.
Some of those books include Pulitzer Prize-winning play Fences by August Wilson, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, The Handmaid's Tale, and then this one, The Hate You Give.
It's been on the bestseller list for 237 weeks.
April Hernandez is the director of the Goddard Public Library. She says these books are ones that have content that could be considered controversial.
If you don't want to expose your kids to that kind of thing, that's fine, that's your choice.
We stopped by the school's administration building Wednesday. We were told the superintendent was in a meeting discussing the issue. Within 2 hours, the district decided to put the books back on the shelves. According to its current policy, when a parent complains, the book in question is removed from use and reviewed.
It's not our job to say that somebody can't check something out.
And for Tori Treadwell, she says that's why she didn't like the decision the school district made in the first place.
It's important because I learn way more from books than I would think in a classroom because the teachers don't really go in depth. Those books go in depth most of the time, and those books that we read, they are written by authors that preach their own opinions, and it's strong and emotional.
Now, one thing we do know is Suzanne Perez from KMUW NPR Radio is the one who broke this story, and she included another aspect in there, which is that the list of books that was handed over to Goddard schools is the same one that is being challenged in districts across the state of Texas, facing legislative investigations, etc. Any surprise that that list is now making its way into Kansas?
Not at all. I mean, we already saw in the recent elections that there are national groups that are throwing money and attention at school board candidates that are going to advance, the concerns about critical race theory, which is a mostly entirely made up controversy. So, I mean, the fact that individual parents might, print off a list and take it in to complain about it doesn't surprise me. Let me say two things really fast. On the one hand, you could say, tempest in a teapot. Somebody brought in a list, they went through the procedure, they did the quick review. Within 24 hours, their decision was reversed, so no harm, no foul. On the other hand, worrying, because if you take a look at that list, I mean, overwhelmingly, we're looking at African American authors, we're looking at books that are focused on the LGBTQ experience. I mean, this is something that really feeds into latent racism and sexism that a lot of people are complaining about in connection with the public schools.
And then really, how many parents have really cracked open one of those books to really go in depth? As Dr. Fox mentioned, a quick read, and you come up, you ban one book, you're one person. Now, not to say the single voice won't make a difference, but how about getting a community and have an open discussion about what books so that we actually really know? For me, I'll wait for the movie to come out and I'll watch it then.
Well, and getting the community involved in the discussion, that is part of the review process. As Goddard explained it, they bring in parents, they bring in librarians and other groups and form a committee that is supposed to look at it. In fact, they did that on an expedited situation this last time because of media interest in the story, we were told.
Yes, but the idea is that the complaint is received, they bring the group together, and then they send out the emails about taking them off the shelves. You don't take them off the shelves and then begin the review process.
And then you got to look at the population of how many African American, Latino, and other groups of people of color are being impacted by not being able to read about their cultures in that community. It doesn't matter if it's 1% or less. That person has a right to read and see themselves so they can feel empowered that, hey, I'm recognized, I matter.
Absolutely.
And of course, I'm going to leave this here. Parents in the district, we are told at any time, can check the books that their child is checking out to see what it is their child is reading. So if a parent has concerns, they can monitor what their own child is ingesting.
And that's perfectly allowed and great and as a right to, but when you're looking at a book to someone else, that your right stops there.
Yeah, and we're going to stop right there because we are out of time, guys. Thank you both so much for joining us. We'd also like to thank our news partners at Cake News, KSN News, and the Wichita Eagle for sharing their materials with us. For now, stay safe and have a great week.